On this episode of the Whiskey Tornado, we review Bardstown Fusion 4, and if you're local to Central Illinois, you are going to want to stick around to the end of this video. What's up, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the Whiskey Tornado. I'm your host, Lance. Today, we are reviewing one of my favorite distilleries. It is Bardstown Fusion 4. And if you're local, stick around to the end of this video because I have huge news coming about Memorial Day weekend. All right, before we get into the review, let me quickly explain our scoring system here on the Whiskey Tornado. We have 7 categories. We rate 0 to 1, 0.5 being average. 2 of those categories are handicapped because they're just not as important as what's in the bottle. Those 2 categories are appearance and availability. They are half the value of the other categories. Then we review the nose, palate, finish, body, and value. One thing I want you guys to keep in mind is don't take this too seriously. I just love to dive in to a bourbon and really dissect it and explore it. Really, at the end of the day, the only thing that's important is, should you buy this and should you put it on your bar? Any score of 3 or better is bar worthy. Any score of 4 or better is bunkersome, just in case that distillery no longer produces the bourbon you love. All right, with all that being said, let's get into our first category, and that is appearance. Alright, so as you can see, Bardstown has done a wonderful job designing this bottle. It's clean, it's modern, they have some of the best corks in the game, especially on the Discovery series. On the Fusion series, these are plastic, they're a little cheap. On the Discovery series, they're metal, they're heavy, they snap into place, they're super nice, but still, very nice bottle. I love it. I really love how detailed they get on the side, and they tell you exactly what the breakdown of the blend is inside the bottle. Now, I know some of you guys hate that I review appearance and make that part of my score, but I think it's important. I don't think it's as important as a lot of the other categories, which is why it's handicapped. But a distillery's bourbon is its art, and the packaging should represent that. So I think it's an important category. On this bottle, we're gonna give it a 0.6. All right, moving on to availability. The Fusion series, super available. I can find it almost anytime I want. We're gonna give it a 0.8. All right, let's move on to the categories that discuss what's actually in the bottle. Let's go to the nose. Oh, the nose on this is really nice. Lots of sweetness. On the nose, tons of butterscotch, caramel, some honey. When I'm going through the nose and palate, I like to look for sweetness first, and then I move to fruit, spice, and then any other things that I get. And on the sweetness, those are the 3 things. Caramel, butterscotch, honey really stood out to me. If I'm looking for fruit, the only fruit notes I get are apples. And I think it's more like a Granny Smith apple on that, like a green apple. Really nice. Moving on to spices. Honestly, guys, the only spice I really get is cinnamon. I don't know that I've ever got I don't know, maybe anise. Anise is a spice, right? I guess I've got that on some rye, some like black licorice anise notes, but cinnamon is really, for me, the only spice I can really pick up. And this has cinnamon. This is almost like cinnamon Red Hots on the nose. And then under that, in the other category, there is a little bit of nuttiness there. Yeah, almost like a Heaven Hill or Wild Turkey nuttiness. Really nice. Very complex nose. Really sweet. I love it. I'm going to give the nose a 0.7. All right, moving on to the palate. Cheers, guys and gals. Nice, approachable, little thin, So I'm looking for sweetness first. The first sweetness notes I got on the palate were honey and caramel. Take another sip and look for some fruits. The first fruit that jumps out at me is red apples, actually. I said granny apples on the smell. On the palate, I think I get more of like red apples, like red apple skin. And spices, the spices, man, that cinnamon red hot really shines through. Getting a good hug. This is 94.9 proof. Kind of shocked by the amount of barrel spice that this has for 94.9 proof. Really dances on your tongue for a lower proof whiskey. You know, a lot of times distilleries, when they go for those lower proofs, they're trying to make it super approachable, easy for people getting into bourbon. This actually has a little bit of spice to it. I like it. As a, you know, somebody who drinks a lot of bourbon that loves higher proof bourbons, I like what this is bringing with the spice. Yeah, lots of spice. And then there's nuttiness again. Oh man, tastes a lot like some Heaven Hill products, or yeah, like there's some nuttiness in there, some honey and some nuttiness, almost like I get in Elijah Craig. So let's break down the back of this, the Fusion series. Let's break down the blend that's in here. What I love about Bardstown is every year these Fusion series, or a couple times a year, as the distillery gets older, they were sourcing a lot of the bourbon that was in here. Now they're sourcing some of it and blending more of their distillate in. So every Fusion series, the age of their own distillate that's blended in here gets older and older. So this is a mix of 40% Kentucky bourbon, 13-year. And the mash bill on that is 74% corn, 10% rye, 8% malted barley. So that is more than likely Bardstown that's in here, that 40%, 13-year Bardstown. That gives it a little age, a little more volume. Then we move on to, there's, from Bardstown, they have 3 of their own distillates mixed in here. 11% of this is a 3-year Bardstown distillate that's 60% corn and 40% rye. So really high rye, no malted barley in that. And I wonder if that's where I'm getting that that spice, that barrel spice from. If so, I love the fact that there's that blend in there to give it some kick, to not just make it feel watered down and boring. It gives it some complexity, I think. All right, moving on to the next blend in here, 15% Bardstown. It's 3-year. That is a 78% corn, 10% rye, and 12% malted barley. So that is the same mash bill as Elijah Craig. I don't know if that's where I'm getting that nuttiness, but I thought I tasted some nuttiness that reminded me of Heaven Hill or Wild Turkey or Jim Beam, something along those lines. Yeah, there's a really nice nuttiness in there, but not too overpowering. It's almost like you could skip over it and not notice, but it's there. Really nice. And then the last part of this blend is 34% of a 4-year Bardstown. So 4-year is about I think that's the highest I've seen of their distillate in their products. And that's a 70% corn, 18% rye, and 12% malted barley. So that is what makes up this. On the palate, really nice. I'm gonna give it better than average. It's a little grain forward. It tastes a little young, but not too bad. We're gonna give it a 0.6 on the palate. All right, moving on to the finish. And the finish for me, I mean, it's getting easier to drink as I go, but there in the beginning, it was a nice hug. It was dancing all over my tongue. Finish is just cinnamon red hots to me. You know, barely better than average on the finish. Not crazy, but not bad either. So we're gonna give it a 0.6. All right, moving on to the body. As you can imagine, with all of this 3 and 4 year blended in, more than 60% of this is a 3 and 4 year blend. The body isn't super heavy, but I'm really impressed with what they've been able to do. The 13 year that's blended in here obviously has helped that younger distillate. really good, no slouch, but the body isn't quite what a lot of bourbon aficionados would like. If you're newer to bourbon, you're not going to notice it. It's going to be fine. But for you bourbon aficionados out there that have had a lot, that are into more barrel-proof bourbons, you're not going to quite feel great about the body, but it's not bad. It's average. It's perfectly average. So I'm going to give it a 0.5. All right, moving on to value. You know, value, this is the only place I can really knock this because of what else is on the shelf. However, I hate knocking this because I love what Bardstown is doing. I love that they are slowly mixing in their own distillate, and it changes every year as their distillate gets older and older. They use less sourced whiskey, more of their aged whiskey. I think it's fantastic. I have no problem paying. I paid $51 for this bottle. No problem paying that for this. It's worth it. But when you look at what's on the shelf, and you can find, I just bought Elijah Craig Barrel Proof. I know most people can't find that. I actually found it on the shelf for $49. I know that's super rare. But there are a lot of $50 bourbons. When you talk about Wild Turkey Rare Breed, you can find that all day on the shelves for $42, $45. And it's higher proof and it's older. I can't give this a better than average score on the value. So I'm gonna have to knock it a little bit. We're gonna give it a 0.4 on the value. However, I have no problem paying what they're asking because I love seeing what they're doing. I love how transparent they are, and it's a good bourbon. All right, so with all that being said, that brings our total score for Bardstown Fusion 4 to a 3.5, making it bar worthy. If you get this, you're gonna love it. You cannot go wrong with this. Stop by Harvest Market. They have a ton of the Fusion series available. If you're there, talk to Ray. He will help you pick a great bourbon. Harvest Market in Champaign is my favorite liquor store. I absolutely love the place. I found more unicorns there than anywhere else. They're a store that actually puts hard to find bourbon on the shelf. That's why I absolutely love them. They have a good selection and good prices. All right, so on to the big news. Mark your calendars for May 30th from 3 to 5 p.m. Make sure you are at Harvest Market. The Bardstown mobile unit is coming, and Steve Nally will be there. If you guys don't know who Steve Nally is, you've been sleeping under a rock. He's in the Bourbon Hall of Fame. He was one of the master distillers for Maker's Mark, and then helped start Wyoming whiskey, and then became the master distiller at Bardstown. He is a legend in the bourbon world. He will be signing bottles. I think they're going to be engraving bottles. They're going to have lots of games. There's going to be tons of fun stuff there. I'll be there. If you see me, make sure you come by and say hi. It's going to be a blast. I can't wait to just be around the bourbon community, meet Steve Nally, meet the Bardstown crew. It's going to be an amazing day. And as most of you know, I absolutely love Bardstown. It is one of my favorite distilleries. They're doing amazing things. They were the Whiskey Tornado's Whiskey of the Year last year, the Discovery 3 series. What I do, if you're in our Patreon crew, I send our Patreon members my highest scored bourbons of the year. I send them blind samples. We do a live stream. We taste them, we rate them, and we decide what our favorite bourbon of the year is. And Bardstown, in a blind flight, placed #1. Discovery 3 series placed #1 last year. So it is one of my absolute favorite distilleries, and I cannot wait to meet a lot of you. I cannot wait to meet Steve Nally. It's just going to be an awesome day that I'm super excited for. Hope to see you guys all there May 30th. Until then, cheers everybody.